Hey, welcome into the show. All right, this is the first episode back since we published the updated ultimate must-have 10 steps for every first-time homebuyer. Those started at episode 400 and went straight through to 410. So I know that many of you are jonesing for some current housing market updates. God knows as a potential first-time homebuyer, I know that you're dying to hear some good news. Well, I've got some. Bring on the positive vibes.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
What's good, fam? Yep, that's what today's episode is all about. What's good in the housing market for you happening right now. I'm David Sidoni, and today, I'm bringing the good news. Now, if you're new to the podcast, maybe you just finished those 10 steps in order. Here's your big tip. Those 10, that's the only time that you should be listening to the podcast consecutively, directly in order. Everyone's home buying journey is going to be different, so everyone's answers, they're going to be someplace different in the podcast library. Use the episode guide and the show notes to find titles for things that maybe it's the next thing that you're curious about, or maybe you've never heard of it and you're like, I should learn about this. Today, what we're doing is a current market update. And every time that we drop the current market data, whether it's the economic data or the specific housing data on prices or inventory or interest rates, those things all have a historical background. And understanding how the housing factors work, it can be really helpful in making your decisions. Every once in a while, I'll also drop episode numbers within these current market updates for good historical episodes you can go back and listen to. And like I always say, you don't need to get a master's in understanding how to buy a home. You don't need to get your doctorate, but there is enough in here if you feel like getting a BA. And today's exciting because I'm going to hit you with some breaking positive news that you might not have heard about. We're talking about credit scores, home prices, mortgage interest rates, housing inventory, new build homes, changing the markets, and updates on new ways that buyers are succeeding in the last part of 2025 and getting ready for 2026. So I know there's a bunch of headlines out there that you guys aren't seeing. So I'm making it my mission today to grab all those first-time homebuyer, most recent information and current headline and housing data that isn't making the top of the news so you can make sure that you know about it. And the reason these aren't leading the news and you're not seeing notifications on your phone about that stuff, well, there's 3 reasons why you just don't hear these stories. One is that the media reports all the housing data through the eyes of the homeowners. Everything's about the people who own the homes. And as a first-time home buyer, you're out there not getting any news because you got to realize you're the one sitting there. You're rooting for the bad news reports. Technically, you need the economy to tank for everybody else except you, of course, so that you can buy a home for cheaper than it costs today. And of course, that's the same thing with interest rates. Yeah, you're rooting for something insane for it to go back to 2 and 3%. But, you thought that was normal? It actually isn't. Not even close, everybody. That was a reaction to a freaking global pandemic, and they ain't coming back, unless you really want to harken back to a time where you can live in lockdown again, wiping down all your groceries. Remember when we did that? So you're not hearing this because flat or stagnant information, that's not breaking news. It's not exciting for the homeowners, the people trying to figure out how much value they have in their property. So that's not going to get reported. But I'm here today to make sure you understand that flat and stagnant market, that's actually good news for you. And that's not great news for the homeowners, so you're not hearing about it. And if something gets bad and you start hearing bad real estate reports on news and the internet and all that, that's great. Because bad real estate news reported is good for you. Because they're reporting for the homeowners. As my boys Run DMC said in the classic hip-hop cut, Peter Piper, he's the big bad wolf in your neighborhood, not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good. And the second reason you're not hearing these first-time homebuyer headlines is because the most realtors in real estate aren't reporting first-time homebuyer news either because they built their entire business to make money off the home sellers, and they straight up ignore first-time homebuyers. And the third reason you're not hearing the stuff I'm about to tell you right now is because news reports like to report change, breaking news, something different, something unique that's going to stop you from scrolling past it. Housing data has been flat for all of 2025. Everything's frozen, no changes, so no news stories. So here's some of the Barry headlines, and this first one's about credit scores, and I can't believe this isn't getting enough press because this could be a significant change for first-time home buyers. I've told you about the Vantage score before, and the headlines just came out in the last couple of weeks. Experian is offering free Vantage Score 4.0 to the mortgage lenders. Now, first of all, free, that's a big deal because mortgage lenders are stoked they don't have to pay for it, so they're going to use it a lot. And second of all, they're telling you they're giving it directly to lenders, and it's starting as of mid-October. Experian, which is one of the 3 credit monitoring bureaus, they're offering a different score besides our friend FICO, Mr. Fair Isaac scoring method that we're all familiar with. Experian is dropping Vantage Score 4.0 during the underwriting process. That's when they run all your information to get your home loan approval number. So for you, this headline means if you haven't run your approval number in the last week with this new scoring system, you might be approved for more than it was the last time that you checked. Here's another great headline for first-time home buyers. 72% more condo sellers than buyers. That's what the headline says. Yeah, a new report from Rocket and Redfin shows that there was an estimated 72.3% more condo sellers than buyers. It's over 100,000 more. And this is the 5th straight month that there have been at least 70% or more condo sellers than buyers. Hey, all of you homies, did you hear that? There's an absolute gold mine sitting there waiting for you to take advantage of it. If you can't afford the dream home you want yet, get yourself out of renting forever by looking into a stepping stone purchase so you can pay yourself for the next few years instead of paying your landlord. You know, while researching this, I also read another article today that said that 50% of renters are moving every 2 years. So here's the thought, a little advanced fiscal advice using a rent replacement strategy. So why save up for the deposit for another apartment when for about the same price as a first and last and security deposit on that new apartment, you can buy your own place and be done renting forever? And I'm telling you this from my own personal story. I didn't do it in my 20s. I rented 4 different apartments in the 90s, lost over $235,000 in appreciation. If I'd understood this and I just bought a condo when I was 21, 22 years old, I would have been set for life at 30. And if you're listening and thinking, dude, you're old, that was the 90s. That math doesn't work today. Well, I've actually done the math. It's in episode 355. It breaks down renting versus buying in 2025. I don't pretend that the math isn't slowly tilting away from the good old days of yesteryears. But when people talk about the equations and they're figuring out, is it better to rent versus buy? Is it better to do a condo and potentially move up? What nobody's throwing into the equation is that the variable of the high rent that you pay, that is what's tilting the scale. The math still works, even though the price tag numbers aren't as incredibly low as it was for the boomers. So the strategies we're looking at here is understanding how to use your first home, even the stepping stone of a condo purchase, as your leverage to get in the game, instead of just saving up while you're tossing the money out the window as a renter and not using it for your own advantage. Understanding this math, this tip is more lucrative than any other real estate investment strategy out there, but nobody teaches it. And unfortunately, I can tell you exactly why, because there's no way for anybody teaching it to make any money off of it. So this is just for you, from the guy who now has the hindsight to tell you straight up what's what. It's not a sales pitch. This is not a theory. This is math. Math that I'm bummed out I didn't get to do, but now I can share it with you. The idea of purchasing condos, especially when they are particularly so favorable, right now, any college who has kids that are going to be moving to a metro area, I really don't understand why they're not teaching this right now. Because the opportunity in condominium purchasing, so that instead of just moving to a metro area and renting for 5 or 7 years and then buying a home, mathematically, there's so much money left on the table that way. I mean, why are we as a country set up that we rent in major and mid-level cities instead of using the rent replacement strategy to build the individual's wealth? They really should teach this. Go back to step 6 and listen to the plan A and plan B that I'm trying to make sure everybody understands for after you own your first home. This isn't just a single purchase. This is a single purchase with a strategy that evolves and is thought about before, during, and after the purchase. And then realize that right now, Condo buyers can negotiate prices down and ask sellers for concessions. And there are lots of options to choose from. So that information I just gave you, about 72% more condo sellers than buyers. That's kind of the way these current market updates work. I'll give you the information and then I'll give you historical data to understand how it works. Like I told you in there to go check out episode 355. Now we'll move on to the next headline. This one said buyer's market, 1 in 5 homes slash prices in September. And that's according to a Realtor.com report. Yes, 20% of homes reduced prices, with the lower and the mid-tier homes. Those were the sellers that were making the deepest cuts to stay competitive as the market starts to cool going into the fall and the winter. Hey, lower and mid-tier, that's you. Homes priced between $350,000 and $500,000 experienced the highest rate of price reductions at 21.6%. The chief economist from Realtor.com, Danielle Hale, she said, quote, September's trends show a housing market increasingly tilting in buyers' favor, with rising inventory of homes for sale, longer days on market, and more competitive pricing. In many areas, momentum is lining up with the seasonal price cuts and other advantages, which will make this fall particularly buyer-friendly relative to recent years, unquote. Hey, that's right now. So to emphasize how exciting this is for you, I'm going to tell you one truth and then one lie. 1, 72% of the people who reach out to How to Buy a Home and think they need a year to a year and a half to be able to afford to buy a home find out they don't need that much time. They find programs for them that aren't making the headlines. And 72% of the people that say that, they're under contract in 3.2 months. That's true. And we've got the data down to the decimal point. Number 2, 98.6% of you didn't know that 20% of the homes in the U.S. market are slashing their prices. That one, that's a lie. Not the part about the price slashing. That's completely true. The lie is that 98.6% of you didn't know that. I don't know the exact percentage of you that didn't know that, so I made up that statistic based on the average normal body temp. But the truth is in that data, the headline, and the statistics, and the evaluation from the economist. So that means right now, during the slower fall and winter holiday home shopping period, 72% of you are more ready than you think. And you can get out there and buy a home before spring of 2026 when the competition's going to increase. The bidding wars are going to raise prices up again. How do I know that? Well, check the stats on the podcast for the past 6 years. Here's some more first-time homebuyer information that came from that article. The median list price held steady at around $425,000 in September. These buried and boring, nothing to report reports, that's kind of the information that you guys need to know. It's your chance to be an innovator, to get ahead of the cycle and get massive benefits. They were talking about the days on market in this article. Properties spent a median time of 62 days on the market in September. That's 7 days longer than last year. And what's good to know about the days on market for you, we're following this. This is 18 consecutive months of days on market going up. Now, that's a clear signal that there's a cooling demand. Lower demand means less competition. That's going to happen for a few more months, so it's your time to take advantage. Some of the areas that they mentioned, Portland is 21 days longer right now. Miami's 16, Orlando's 14, Tampa's 13. Yeah, gang, Florida's got major changes going in the market right there. Some advantages of first-time home buyers are happening a lot. Las Vegas has 13 days. They also talked about a lot of Texas. It's very similar to Florida, parts of California, and Nashville and Atlanta were 2 cities that got mentioned as well. Okay, the next headlines I'm going to talk about, big warning for this one. This is super nerdy time information because over the next few months, you are going to hear a lot of this stuff on the news because they love to talk about the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates. So let me give you a brief breakdown of the Federal Reserve, who they are, and how they impact the real estate market. The Federal Reserve, which is also known as the Fed, is the United States Central Bank. Now, the Fed doesn't control mortgage interest rates directly, but its decisions and policies, they can push mortgage rates up or down. Now, the stories that you're going to hear over the next few months, the news is going to be talking all about the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee, the FOMC. They meet 8 times a year, and its members must decide whether to increase, decrease, or maintain the target range for the federal funds rate. That is not your mortgage interest rate, but it's the barometer for the economy and how banks lend money. And then the people who lend home loans, they kind of react based on that. And we've got 2 meetings coming up at the end of the year, and they're starting to make headlines. Complete details of how this whole thing works, it is dense. And frankly, it even bores nerdy guys like me who really get into this stuff. So I'm going to cut to the chase on how the whole Fed stuff happening over the next couple months is going to affect you. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, he's saying things that make people think that there could be 2 interest rate cuts coming up in the end of 2025. Now, he's got several different reasons for doing it. And if mortgage interest rates drop because of that, and that's a byproduct of what happens, then that could work out for the economy as well. So where we're sitting on mortgage rates is, hey, guess what? They're flat too. Yeah. The 30-year fixed mortgage rates, they were at 7%. They dropped down to 6.17% on September 16th, and they've been hovering just above that 3-year low we hit in mid-September. Now, side note, if you are crunching your numbers on a mortgage calculator, first, go to the show notes and find episode 180. It says, online mortgage calculators are garbage. And then make sure that you remember that a 6.2 reported mortgage interest rate, that's the average in the country. When a first-time homebuyer has top-notch guidance from unicorn lenders, many first-time homebuyers that have gone through the system here and that I've worked with for 20 years, they end up getting rates a full half a point less than what the national average is. Over the last couple of months, I've heard reporting all over the country of first-time homebuyers getting interest rates at 5.5%. Now, I'm recording this podcast before the October 29th meeting. So this is going to drop after that happens. But as I record, I took a look at the CME Fed Watch. That's a thing. It actually has predictions and forecasts from the top economists in the country. And there is a 99% chance that the Fed is going to lower the interest rate on October 29th. So let's just assume they did. I've reported in the past that when these cuts happen, the thing about interest rates is they'll actually lower ahead of the Fed rate cuts. They anticipate it. They do what we call baking them in. And then what happens is after the Fed cuts the rates, mortgage interest rates, sometimes they creep up, and that confuses people. So by the time this drops, rates could already be creeping back up. But the key is they're still sitting in that same flat place somewhere in the low 6s. And these times when the rates drop to their lowest, I reported the last 2 times that this happened, these baked in pre-Fed rate cuts. And I'm going to keep reporting all this stuff happening in the future since we do have another meeting coming up in December. And if the economists expect another cut happening then, one of the things that's interestingly lining up is November before the next meeting. That could be the lowest interest rates that we see for 2025. And then I'm just going to throw these terms out to you because you're going to start hearing about it. News stories are going to start reporting quantitative tightening and quantitative easing. Now, that sounds like gibberish to you. Here's the layman's terms equations. Quantitative easing, something that happened and was helped to create those insane 2 and 3% mortgage interest rates, pandemic and post-pandemic. The Fed did this quantitative easing from 2020 to about 2022, 2023, and then they reversed it, and they've been doing what we call quantitative tightening. Today, they're hinting that the numbers that they're looking at, they're in a position where they might discuss bringing quantitative easing back in some form. Now, that makes a big headline, but of course, you got to understand what the heck quantitative easing is. But in general, if they do that, interest rates could really drop. Okay, here's another headline that definitely didn't get splashed all over the media sources. It says, buyers and sellers battle for the driver's seat in the housing market. Everybody wants to know at all times, hey, what's going on? Do the buyers or the sellers have the upper hand right now? Well, if it's flat and frozen, nobody's going to report anything because there's nothing shocking happening. Right now, half the country prices are going up very slowly like 1%. And in the other half, they're going down very slowly. And the interest rates, they're not jumping up and down wildly. And the inventory, it's going up, but very, very little. We'll get more into that subject of inventory in just a little bit. So buyers and sellers don't know what's going on because there's nothing dramatic to report. I mean, some sellers are still expecting they're going to get massive bidding wars with buyers even waiving their inspections and giving them everything that they want. But that's not happening in at least half of the country right now. And some buyers, their expectations are off too. They hear stories of new inventory happening. And again, more on that factor in just a little minute. And then they hear like I told you, about sellers slashing their prices and paying credits to the buyers to help them sell their homes. But real estate is hyper local. That could be true in Florida and Texas and other areas. But the Northeast region of the United States right now, homes are still selling there in bidding wars quickly. It's a mixed market. So the answer to that question of the headline, is it a buyer's or seller's market at the end of 2025? The answer is your favorite. It depends. In this case, it doesn't depend on you and your goals and your finances. But is it a buyer or seller's market depends on where you're looking to buy. The good news is for 50% of you, you're going to get a good answer. Okay, next subject to talk about. This is true for 2025, and it's been true for the past several years. Low inventory. If you're a new listener coming into this episode directly from that number one trusted first-time homebuyer 10-step system in the country, you know the one that started and went 400 to episode 410. Well, if that's all you've heard, you haven't heard 6 years of me reporting, and I've been talking about one factor alone that affects the housing market, all of the data. Everything that everyone wants to figure out, there's only one thing that affects it. Longtime listeners, say it with me now. Low inventory. Yeah, since 2019, I've been saying that one thing and only one thing only is going to affect home prices. It's the extreme, historical, complete bottom lack of inventory. Yet, when I turn on the news or I listen to people talk about real estate information, nobody talks about it except me, and I talk about it incessantly. So much so, we made this little sound effect. Say it with me now. Low inventory. Low inventory is so important, and I am truly shocked that nobody else talks about this. So when you're listening to other people and they're trying to give you their predictions, if they're not talking about low inventory, take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a bucket of salt. Throw salt on that person and stop listening to them. Forget all the negative articles about the housing market increases being unsustainable. And so you just sit around and wait for a crash and buy something at a discount. I understand why everyone wants that to happen, but take the emotions out of it. And all I've been reporting since 2019 is the math. The low inventory means supply and demand are absolutely not working in the favor of the buyer. So the people sitting around waiting for prices to drop, right now, with the inventory levels where they are, you might see a mini slump or a flat market, but in general, that's pretty much the bottom of it. Home prices are going to keep going up until the supply matches the demand. And I've been reporting it all 6 years here, and I'll tell you if I see changes. I've been coaching first-time homebuyers since 2006, before I started the podcast, and I'm always talking to them about the best time to buy. And sometimes the best time isn't right now. And, when you're working with your clients for the long game, like myself and the unicorns, then you always want to make sure people understand when the best time to buy is mathematically. And as unbelievable as it's been for the past 6, oh wait, let me keep going, 10, oh wait, let me keep going, 15 years, low inventory, it's been pushing the data. And the economists and me doing my research, I have not seen a time in these last 15 years when a major correction or crash was imminent, thanks to the low inventory. And we're still in the same data position. And for the skeptics out there that want to fight me on this, I'm on record and I am more correct for more years than wherever you heard somebody say the housing crash is coming. I urge you to listen to episode 383, Mid-Year Market Crucial Report, Part 2. So what I'll do is I'll give you a brief summary of the inventory data, but you really should listen to episode 383. Put that on your playlist so you can get the full story, so you can be confident moving forward. Inventory. Inventory is the only factor that's going to affect housing prices. And today, we're anywhere from 4 to 6 million homes short right now at the end of 2025. Now, that happened because the new home builders went bankrupt way back in 2008 and 2012, and building screeched to a halt during that Great Recession period. And today, we're still 4 to 6 million short. So if you do hear a news story saying, hey, inventory's up in your area, make sure you understand that it's up from the very, very, very bottom. You went from an F to a D minus. It's still really bad. A crash isn't coming because the demand for a low supply trumps everything else. Do you know that a few years ago, we saw the highest price appreciation ever? Prices jumped insane from 2020 to 2023. And then at the end of 2023, home prices were still going up, even though prices had been going up insane right after the pandemic. And at the end of 2023, interest rates had the highest jump they'd ever had in history, from 3% to 8%, almost tripling. That is a deadly combination. Think about it. Highest price raising we've ever seen from 2020 to 2023, and then the highest interest rates. That means unaffordability should have been huge. That should have been a completely tanking market. And everybody was predicting that. And what happened? Because there wasn't enough inventory and there was so much demand, the market slumped for a matter of weeks. And then 2024 and 2025, it's been going up since. Only in the last few weeks have we seen a little bit of flattening. But that has to do a little bit with the cycle of where we are in the time of year. This isn't the beginning of a crash. No way. The data of the inventory shows that there's still not enough homes. It's simple supply and demand. So why are we in this flat market right now? One of the reasons is the sellers are feeling locked into their homes. That means they're sitting there not wanting to sell because they've got a 3% interest rate on the home that they've got right now, and they don't want to sell and buy into a 7 or a 6.5% interest rate. So that kept them on the sidelines, not putting their home for sale. So that low inventory, that kept prices going up this year. But as we move into next year, they're going to get over it because it's been 2, 3, 4 years they've been locked in and they need to move. And we also saw the flat market because the new home builders didn't want to put too many homes out there since buyers weren't jumping at the chance to buy. So that continued low inventory. Again, pushing prices up for the first half of this year. So if you're getting all this information about low inventory, you're trying to figure out what's next. Well, it's simple. We need more inventory. So if you're taking this all in, wondering how this affects home prices, it's simple. We don't have enough inventory still. Period. The end. Curtain. Prices are going to keep going up because no one's going to be building 4 to 6 million homes in the spring of next year. And there's a huge amount of pent-up buyers that are waiting to buy. Recent surveys, over 70% of the hopeful first-time home buyers from 2024 and 2025 said they put their plans on hold and haven't bought a home yet. And when the interest rates drop more with the Fed cutting stuff at the end of this year, all those pent-up buyers are going to flood the market, and there will not be enough homes to satisfy all of them. And the spring is going to see the bidding wars come back in full force. Thanks to the one thing, say it with me, everybody, low inventory. Last year at this same time of year, I did an episode about the end of the year window of opportunity before the rush of homes in the spring. Well, here we are a year later, and that happened. And that rush was met by, shocker, not enough homes for sale. And the spring and summer of 2025, prices went up. Then at the end of the summer, here we are in this flat area and even down in some parts of the country. But thanks to low inventory, we're in the same window of opportunity right now, a year later. And the opportunity is choice over price. And here's some math to demonstrate. If interest rates dropped a full percentage point, thanks to the low inventory, millions low, the sellers would start putting their homes on the market, and all those pent-up buyers, well, they would flood in to snatch them up, thus prices going up and bidding wars. So the math looks like this. Today, buying in this window, a $425,000 home at a 6.28% interest rate, it will cost you the exact same monthly payment as a $475,000 home at a 5.28 interest rate. The difference is if you're buying right now in the window, you have the luxurious option of choice. You're not going to get run over when you go to an open house with the onslaught and stampede of buyers out there. People going Hunger Games trying to put bidding wars on every single home. You can get the exact same payment for a home, by the way, that in the math I gave you was $50,000 less. And there's going to be far less competition. And if interest rates did drop that full point, like I talked about, in that mathematical equation, if you're waiting for that to quote unquote save money, you can always refinance when the rates drop. But you can't go back and change and try to ask for end of the year pricing, or you can't go back and say, well, but now I'd like to buy a home without a whole bunch of people bidding up against me and making me stress out and not sleep for 3 days. So the window's here, and the window is affected by that one thing. Say it with me now. Low inventory. Everything else you hear, it's just noise. And the good news is now you know what us hardcore data nerds know. You have the insider information to take advantage of this unbelievable and, illogical housing market. And hey, I keep doing this year after year, so I'm just going to keep telling you where these little windows happen. The good news is now you know what us hardcore data nerds know. You've got the insider information to take advantage of the unbelievable and illogical housing market. And it is completely illogical. That's why I'm glad that I've got years and years of reporting on it. So when windows like this come up, you don't go, oh, who's this guy? I'm the guy who's been telling you every year, this doesn't make sense. I understand, but here's an opportunity for you. And I also keep my eye on what people are thinking in the future. And I know spring's going to be big because the home builders are talking about it. And those guys are cheap. Home builder confidence grows despite market uncertainty. Yeah, those frugal people, if they're thinking about building stuff next year, that means they expect a lot of buyers coming out. There was a report that came out recently that said the builders see recovery and they have confidence for the first time in months. This is from the National Association of Home Builders. Their chief economist, Robert Dietz, he said, quote, the HMI gain, that's the report they create to show the confidence they have in the market. That HMI gain in October, it's a positive signal for 2026 as our forecast is for single-family housing starts to gain ground next year, unquote. So the home builders who won't build anything unless they're positive someone's going to buy it, they're ramping up next year because they too anticipate the interest rates dropping and they know there's pent-up demand. But here's the cool thing. Before next year, at the end of 2025, go back and listen to episode 391. There is a really sick window of opportunity happening. Home builders are actually throwing out fatty discounts. We'll put episode 391 in the show notes. They're dropping prices, giving incredible loan deals. And this same article that talked about the confidence they have for next year, it revealed that right now, 38% of the home builders reported cutting prices this month. And the average price reduction was 6% off the price. Okay, and the last two headlines, these go together. First one was 82% of Gen Z say reaching home ownership is harder and they're putting careers ahead of their home ownership. The second one said the majority of buyers are now using AI to learn about the housing market. So the Gen Z article said that in terms of milestones, Gen Zers are advancing their career first, buying a house second, and marriage and having kids are third and fourth. That's how they're ranking them. Now, for me, this is sad. Not because I care about anybody getting married or having kids. You do you, whatever you want. It's the first two. The fact that people are putting advancing their career ahead of buying a home, it just saddens me. It's depressing because you deserve better. You deserve to understand it doesn't have to be an either or choice. I get so bummed out that aspiring first-time home buyers aren't being reached with the proper information. It's not a list that you have to do in a consecutive order. You can complete more than one at a time, but I get it. Gen Z feels that like this is not possible. And that is totally understandable. Nobody in big real estate cares enough to show you how to achieve both your career advancement and home ownership simultaneously. There are affordable options to buy using a rent replacement strategy so you can build stability, security, and wealth. Doing those two things simultaneously and then building that stability, wouldn't that be great for whatever the next things on your list, marriage, kids, pets, travel? Being stable means those next things on your list would come along a lot faster and a lot easier. But people think home ownership is so unaffordable that they move it down to second and they just focus on their careers. Meanwhile, they wake up, it's 5 years later, and they've paid over $100,000 in rent. And again, that bums me out because no one's telling you the right information of what you actually could do. And you know what? That's not just me talking. That's the article. Check these stats. Same article said, when they asked Gen Z an estimate of what they would need for a down payment, their average estimate was $54,546. But when they actually ran the numbers for what the true number was for all of those people, it was $30,250. That crushes my soul. I mean, how can all of those Gen Zers be off by $24,000 on what they actually need for a down payment? I mean, it's no wonder that they're putting their careers first and putting homeownership way down the line. They've got the wrong information. And the fact that they have the wrong information is supremely important for you to recognize when you're doing your own research. I mean, think about that. This is an article about Gen Zers getting wrong information, which means they Googled it and they got it wrong. And who Googles better than Gen Z? Yet in this survey, they were off by $24,000. That's 50% off. This is the thing I've been trying to tell people. For an entire generation of first-time home buyers, for them to be 50% off, it says only one thing. The source material out there is wrong. You know, for years, I've been telling people don't believe the negative stories you hear out there. At this point, I am so Sisyphusing this. That boulder is gigantic. 50% off from the people who grew up researching everything on their phone. They didn't go to dinner without checking out stuff on their phone multiple times. It's the source material, gang. It's mostly wrong because you're not making anybody any money. It's the source material, gang. It's wrong. Which freaks me out even more when we talk about the next headline, that a majority of buyers are now using AI to learn about the housing market. Yeah, a report from Realtor.com reported that 82% of Americans are using AI tools to get information on housing. Thank God that the article said later on that 62% still eventually end up calling a real estate agent to get information. But homies, if we've learned one thing from the headline experiment of this whole episode, it's that first-time homebuyer education and information is tough to come by. It's that the source material is wrong. Remember, AI is made up of the internet, and we're figuring out that most of the information on the internet is wrong. And I get it. It's got to be crazy disheartening to hear that an entire industry has dropped the ball in producing clear and correct information for first-timers. I'm here. I vow to fix that. And it's not just words from me. I've got the math and the proven strategies and the systems and over 100 real-life testimonials. The people that actually got the correct information and made it happen, understanding it was so much more doable than the internet told them. That's what we're laying out to try to help you to make sure you get the right information. And if you've got more questions yourself, you've got all kinds of resources here at howtobuyahome.com. In fact, I even made an AI tool to fight this battle that I'm fighting. And you guys can use it. It's 24/7. And the difference is it's made with the accurate information. It doesn't pull everything from the internet. It actually pulls from the source material, from everything that I've ever done, podcasting, coaching, videos. It's a robot programmed with the right information. So you're not 50% off like all the Gen Zers were. So if you want to, you can go talk to AI David. It's there not to confuse you. It's there not to misinform you. It's to give you just the straight information because the possibilities are out there, but no one's taken the time to actually lay it out for you. And of course, at howtobuyahome.com, you can always just ask a direct question to me, the human me. Hit Ask David. I'll personally respond to it. Or you can jump on the window of opportunity that I'm talking about and ask for a local vetted unicorn professional in your area so you can get the best options for you and then lay them out and make the decision that works best for you, knowing you've been given the right information to form those decisions. Check the show notes for information on all the episodes I mentioned in this one. Keep researching, and please don't believe everything you read, especially when they tell you you can't do it. It's not impossible. You can do it.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyaHome.com to get started.